Next up, we have Natalie Dubois.
Hello, everyone. So my research began with a question. How could there be such a big divide between the review of a building by an architecture critic in a major newspaper and a user of said building? The structure in question is the recently completed Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape and Design at the University of Toronto. It's a renovation and an addition to an existing building, Knox College, that was built on a perfectly circular piece of land in the middle of Spadina Avenue in 1875. Led by Dean Richard Summer and designed by the architecture firm Nada, the new One Spadina Crescent was completed in 2017. The addition's roof and the graduate studio space below is the building's showpiece. Inside, it forms a monumental, irregularly shaped room with soaring white ceilings, which billow and undulate here and there, opening up into skylights. Outside, the roof collects and funnels rainwater into cisterns below the building for irrigation. Parts of the roof are planted for the department's Green Roof Innovation Testing Lab. While I have a personal connection to the project, because I completed my Master's of Architecture at the University of Toronto in 2012, in the faculty's older building, a new school of architecture is of greater significance. It is a tool for teaching new generations of architects, and it is also a symbol to the campus and the rest of the city about what architecture is and can be in the Anthropocene. So why does it matter if this building is good, as the architecture critic says, or bad, as a user, which is a member of the faculty, says? Because of climate change. Now, I don't need to explain this to you all because we just watched John's presentation. But the building and construction industry currently contributes just over a third of all global greenhouse gas emissions. And the buildings we construct today do not only belong to the present, they belong in the future too. They will live on in the future as we deal with the more and more severe effects of climate change. For example, it is estimated that 90% of New York City's building stock will still be in use in 2050. But this is only half of the story. There's a famous quote attributed to the architect Carl Elefante that says that the greenest building is the one that is already built. And what this means is that anywhere between 20% to 50% of a building's energy that it will use over the course of its entire lifetime is from its embodied energy. The embodied energy is the energy that's used to extract the materials from the earth, transform and transport them to the building site, and to put them together. So while the operating efficiency of what we build is important, we must also construct buildings that will last longer, lengthening the cycle of tearing down and building up as much as possible. But how do we know if a building is energy efficient or built to last? With no regulatory body verifying the veracity of architects' claims, no system in place to universally evaluate buildings in use, and little incentives for architects to revisit their work, often the main body of knowledge that exists in the world about a building is in the record, so what was said or written. It's been argued that architecture is a tripartite system comprised of the building, its image, and critical discourse. Rather than looking at images, as John has done, I'm interested in examining how language affects our understanding of the built environment's role in addressing climate change. American writer Rebecca Solnit illustrates the immense power of words to clarify when she asks us to replace climate change with violence. It's provocative and emotional, and she hopes it will prompt us to see the world that we are creating differently. Word for word, like brick by brick, what reality are the words we use in architecture constructing? In current discourse, the words that we use are sustainable, green, performance, flexible, adaptable, and transformable to refer to how a building addresses issues of resource consumption and longevity. And indeed, these words were often used to describe the new Daniels faculty. Here are a few quotes. The building needed to be absolutely overtly sustainable, a model of sustainable construction with built-in resiliency and the ability to transform over time, a generous margin of flexibility, and a highly performative roofscape. So, the new addition seems green. The language used by the architects, the client, and some critics construct this impression. We might be thinking that it seems like a great new addition to the campus and to the city, but we're missing a major part of the picture. Let's get back to the disconnect that started my research. The reason for the divide between the architecture critic and the professor that uses the space is habitability. So what is habitability? A basic definition derives from the original meaning of the word habitat, which refers to a species' natural home. Using Google Books Ngram Viewer, which is a tool that charts the frequency of words over time, we can see that sustainability really took off in the 1980s. But habitability had an earlier bump, actually, between the 1960s and the 1980s. This era had similar concerns to our own with the beginning of the environmental movement, and it was also the start of space exploration. We became aware that our habits could actually impact the planet, and that the planet might not support these actions forever. We began to think about what we need to live on spaceship Earth at the same time that our minds turned to worlds outside of our planet. Since the 1960s, the term habitability has been used to refer to research by the US military and NASA to evaluate the fitness of their built facilities for human occupation. It's also widely used today. There's a slide missing. It's also widely used today in regards to planetary habitability, which refers to the potential of a cosmic body to develop and maintain environments suitable for life. In terms of architecture, habitability has been proposed as the only effective strategy towards implementation of true sustainability, defined in terms of use and utility in buildings rather than resource efficiency. It has been argued that forgetting the needs of inhabitants results in spatial solutions that are fixed, ultimately leading to excessive and inefficient consumption of resources. Indeed, the French philosopher Bruno Latour has asked, but why has the world been made uninhabitable in the first place? Why has it not been conceived as if the question of its habitability was the only question worth asking? So one Spadina crescent may be sustainable, but is it habitable? A comparison between the architectural photography of the space and the space in use is revealing. In a photo from the Buildings Review in Canadian Architect, the space is empty. It's pristine, monumental, and glowing. But occupied and without the magic tricks of professional photography, we can see that the space is completely out of scale for its inhabitants. They're dwarfed by the ceiling, and it's not performing for them. According to a member of the faculty, only 1 out of 8 of his students choose to work in the studio. Here are a few quotes from building occupants. The students report subpar working conditions. The graduate studio space is an acoustic and spatial nightmare. And for students that have to use this space for long hours every day, it falls noticeably short. It is unfortunate that a building constructed in 2017 cannot outperform one completed in 1874. In response to students' concerns, Dean Summer recommended that students go to the libraries, the fabrication labs, or the main hall. In other words, the dean recommended that students go somewhere else. So we discovered that the space that was intended to house them is more fixed than it seemed. How is this sustainable? The answer is that it's not, because it is not habitable. Was this new addition worth the violence perpetrated towards the planet in extracting new materials and consuming energy reserves if it sits underutilized? We can see now how habitability has been obscured by sustainability, and how even if a building is deemed sustainable, it can still contribute to climate change if it is not habitable. So habitability must come first. Just as Solnit implores us to call climate change, which is an abstract term for a complicated concept, by the simpler and more visceral violence, can we find a word more suitable for the record than habitability? As a tool for building new worlds, it's a rather blunt instrument. It's long, technical, and uncommon. If we strip the word habitability back to its most simplest form, what do we find? We discover the word give. There is a wealth of meanings in the word give that are readily understandable by many, and it implies a reciprocal connection. Humans aren't separate from their environment, whether natural or built. And as a noun, give means the ability to adapt or flex. What can a building give to the planet and to its inhabitants? When Knox College was built in 1875, its architects had no awareness of climate change. The average temperature of the Earth was almost 1 degree Celsius cooler than it is today. Knox College would not be considered sustainable under the existing definition, but it has proven infinitely habitable. It gives. It's managed to adapt over time to a huge variety of uses: a seminary, military barracks turned hospital, medical, laboratory, and production facility, art studios, an eyeball bank, and now a school of architecture. In the Anthropocene, architecture will need to give more than it takes. We cannot hope to improve our built environment, and by extension, our future on this planet, if we don't have accurate knowledge of the situation and the facts on the ground. It's hard to win a battle if you don't know the location of your troops, and we risk losing the war against climate change. More often than not, what we learn about a building is from the record. By introducing a new word to be used and to be tested, perhaps we can begin to tease out areas of improvement in the architectural sphere before the clock runs out. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Natalie.